So I want to know who, and of course you like before we were recording, I was like, oh, I was like, who's gotten it wrong of all the coverage? And then you were like, well, I'm not sitting home watching everybody who's covering me. And I was like, of course, right.
I'm not watching any coverage of me. What I have watched is very limited to basically Robert Barnes did a video talking about hair follicle testing and stuff like that. It's a really interesting video. He has some of the facts wrong in there. Nothing like super crazy or whatever about it, but it's just an interesting video about hair follicle testing. I'm not going to say whether or not it applies to my case or not. People should, though, just check out what he says, because it's a really it's a thought-provoking discussion about the nature of testing and how the state utilizes testing. That whole discussion is useful for anyone curious about the legal system. I was curious what he had to say about it in relation to my case. His video is not making it into my trial, so it doesn't really matter. As far as other stuff, I really haven't watched it. I don't. Most people don't know enough to make a fully fleshed out opinion on the legal matters. And that's how, that is not a knock on anybody, just so everybody's clear. That's how all of us operate when we're doing the law tube thing. We don't know the facts except for what's presented and what we can try and infer by reading between the lines. So people do their coverage. Whether it's good or bad is irrelevant to me, because unless they have some interesting novel legal theory, that's a legal theory and not an evidence-based theory, it's not going to be that useful. So it's much more helpful for me to just go over my own case, review the discovery documents I have, talk to my attorney about what we're going to do and stuff like that.
And the part you mentioned about Barnes talking about hair follicle testing, that's because they tested your kids for drugs and something came up on one of their hair or something like that. And I didn't understand, how does that even get into somebody's hair?
That's a really, really good question. And the hard part is the internet goes with this weird theory that someone was dosing my child with a drug. They blame me, of course.
It looks a lot like dry shampoo. That's what I figured. I use dry shampoo all the time instead of washing my hair.
Look, I have no idea about that. What I don't know is how that test result came to be. And there's a lot of ways that a test result can come to be that have nothing to do with taking drugs. And this is, again, if you want a good exploration of the problems with hair follicle testing in specific, go watch the Barnes video. Don't sit and listen to me. I could talk quite a bit about it now. I've done a ton of research on catching up on the literature for it, how the legal world treats it, what you would have to do to challenge all of it. The reality is whether or not we end up challenging it depends highly on how our cases go. And there's no real indication right now of what that looks like in specificity. Not enough for me to comment anyway. So, but you can go watch it. But the answers for how cocaine gets in a hair follicle test range from someone's doing cocaine to someone is exposed to cocaine through some sort of environmental condition. And that environmental condition doesn't necessarily mean in the environment. If we take it out of cocaine, for example, and we go into meth, people who smoke meth in a house, there's meth in the air. There's actual meth fumes, and those can be absorbed into hair follicles. And so what you have is in places where, the smoking of a drug takes place, especially children can have, detection because it literally gets into their skin on their head and into the hair follicle and then grows into the hair that way. We're not accused of anything like that. We're not accused of our child ingesting cocaine. We're not accused of actually anything involving that at all. Our accusation, our charge in the criminal case is literally the presence of a controlled substance where minor children live. That's the extent of the charge. So it's people on the internet come up with like crazy theories about it and stuff like that. But, we know the truth about it. We know that our child was not ingesting cocaine. That's a very,
if they were, they would have been getting so much more homework done, cleaning their room.
they'd probably like, again, hair follicle numbers are really tough, but you could imagine that they would go to a hospital, like that there would be some sort of medical record of that. And there it just isn't any. There's nothing like that. There's no witness to that. This isn't a claim the state is making. The state has their evidence and they're not claiming it. This is purely an internet fiction. And, that's fine. The internet only has what information they have. I'm not begrudging people for it. I do think it's a little ludicrous that people like assume that that's what was going on, but it's the internet and they assume that everybody's insane, because most of us are, honestly.
So other than Barnes, what other law tubers do you think have been fair, or you're not, you don't know enough?
I really don't watch. Like I just don't. There's no profit for me in it. And I mean, like the information is useless to me for most people. They're going to make claims and speculations and try and explain aspects of the law, and that's great. But I don't need that done. Like I have me, and then I have my lawyer, and we discuss, what's going on based on the facts that we actually know, based on the discovery that's out there. And the discovery is pretty interesting. I can't talk about it right now, but at some point, maybe I'll get to disclose more. But it's when you actually get into the case and see what the state has, you go, okay.
What's involved in discovery? Because I know that Gina Carano's case, I think, is moving forward against Disney. And I'm told that that's going to just involve a lot of just opening up emails and texts. I'm like, well, that's going to be pretty cool, because I'm very curious to see who had been scheming against Gina since the very beginning and who had it out for her.
Well, discovery in civil cases and criminal cases they're similar ideas, but they're different in how they work out. Criminal case discovery, the state has to disclose all of the information that it plans to use against you, and they have a duty to disclose any potentially exculpatory information. We saw this with Alec Baldwin's case, where the state gave a bunch of discovery over, but then there were these other bullets that, even though they weren't really related to the case, they could have had some exculpatory value. Someone said, oh, these bullets were on set. And they gave them to the prosecutor. Well, the prosecutor didn't give those to the defense. And the defense is like, hey, maybe these bullets could have been used to prove our client's innocence. And now we don't get to, it's a Brady violation, is what it amounts to. They have a duty to turn over this evidence that may make you not guilty. And they didn't do that. So in criminal cases, you have the state with a duty to do all of this. And then you have to try and hold the state and to the fire. In civil cases, it's similar, but it gets a little bit, there's less of a duty to turn over like information that may be helpful to the other side, unless they ask for it specifically and stuff like that. So they have to, have knowledge of it. It becomes a little bit more of a problem. Figuring out this stuff with the state, and discovery violations in civil cases have different remedies than the state. But in a criminal case, the way it looks is just, the state emails you typically packets of information, and you just go through them. And there's pictures, there's, interviews, there's all that stuff. And you just have to go through it all. And God, there's a lot of it.
What do you think, Nick, are some of the biggest, like if you could dispel like the top two rumors in your situation, or the top couple of mistruths, what would they be?
Well, there's one in the chat. Donovan says Nick is a child neglector at minimum. We're not charged with child neglect. We're not accused of child neglect at all. Actually, that's not a concern of the state in regards to us at all. Which again, this all comes from, there's this big gap of information that occurs because the state has what it initially has, and then the state has its case that it builds over the course of things. And we're not accused of that. In fact, the state is pretty clear. It's pretty obvious from, their observations and their interviews with us, with the children, with our family members, that isn't a concern of theirs at all. That the children love the hell out of us. We love the hell out of them. They have a full home of activity and a great environment to live in, that we're very involved with them. And like, people have built a narrative based on these initial reports that came in, but those reports were ignored. Initially, they were used as a basis for a search warrant, which that has its own issues to potentially hammer out, but those weren't actually the basis of anything involving the children. Our children were removed due to an emergency placement because, again, there's a statute that says that if there's a controlled substance in a home, the child is presumptively in danger. So
did you know that could happen?
Did I know that could happen? Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a statute. Like, I think your question is a weird one to answer because there's an implication that, like, we're violating that statute, but
yeah,
the state has to prove that we intended to violate that statute.
Okay. I think I'm just such a prude. Like, I almost wouldn't even let my friend hold my baby because she had been like smoking cigarettes. I'm like, did I not go?
It's interesting when you really get down to like what the state considers like child maltreatment and child neglect, and when you put rules down on paper, they often don't make sense. And this is the boon and bane of the family court system and the juvenile protection system, is that often you get nonsensical results. Like, you can have people who are consistently intoxicated, or they have a home filled with like nicotine smoke, for example, and that won't be child endangerment. And it's like, well, I mean, that's probably more dangerous than a lot of situations children are in when we get down to it. Or you can have, they'll say, for example, you can't have a controlled substance in your house, which, sure, that makes sense. That's a sensical law, but there's a whole bunch of substances in your house that are perfectly fine to have that are as dangerous or even far more dangerous to children, like bleach, for example. And you don't get arrested for having like a thing of bleach in the wrong place, even though that would be more dangerous to children than, for example, a child stumbling across marijuana or something in one of the states where marijuana is legal or illegal. You have the whole fucking Tide Pod thing, right? Like, the amount of toxic and dangerous chemicals that are in our house are actually, like, there's myriad of them, but they're household chemicals. And we have an expectation that people handle those in a responsible way.
And you're like, look, we were just using the Coke like an OxyClean. Just
no, I'm not admitting to or saying anything like that at all. Not even as a joke, it's unfortunate because it would be nice to joke about it, but it is really serious. Like, it's serious for us. And we don't really, I'm a guy who likes to joke about everything, but this one I can't really find funny in regards to the kids, especially. And it's like, you want to be jovial about it, but it's difficult, at some point I'll get to, I guess. But the other misconception is that people think like, they think, because you asked for like two misconceptions. The other one is that people think that I'm not complying with drug tests and stuff like that, because again, there's a gap of information. And the reality is that ever since the county actually asked us to do drug tests, we've turned in clean drug tests. And they don't have an unclean drug test. So there's a problem. There's a problem with that narrative for them. People think also that we were drug tested like when we were arrested. They didn't do anything like that. They have misunderstandings about like procedure and what happened. They're like, oh, they must have arrested them and tested them, and they tested positive for everything. It's like, no, actually, they didn't test us at all. They didn't even ask.
Wow. Okay.
Which is weird It's weird that they didn't. Like, I would assume that they would, and they could have secured warrants to, to get, or a judge's order or whatever to get drug tests from us. They just didn't do that. And so once the county asked us for drug tests, we complied immediately. We've been complying ever since. People think that we paid, we posted bond. Both Lady Rackets and I posted bond for unconditional release, but that was the criminal case. The family case, we've been under conditions for quite some time. And, people may have questions about why you post bond. There's a ton of good reasons to post bond, depending on how long your case is and what you have to do. If you're going to be under, this is just general advice for people. If you have a substance charge in Minnesota and you go and you get arrested, they're going to release you. And if they release you on conditions, the condition is going to be complying with random drug testing. Well, that random drug testing is going to cost you $75 a shot. So if you're going to be on random drug testing for several months, then you just have to do a math formula of how much your bond costs and how much you're going to pay in drug testing. And so we were arrested May 23rd. Our first hearing is August 21st, our next hearing. And then after that, it could be several months past that. Well, if you're going to be on drug testing through that program, you're going to pay $75 every 2 to 4 days.
Oh,
per person. So if you're going to do that, well, if you get tested 10 times, it's $700, $750 a month. If you get tested 10 times in a month, which is a very kind of normal average outcome. And so if you pay your unconditional bond, if you're going to be on release or whatever for, 3, 4, 5 months, it starts to become a pretty easy cost proposition to say, well, I can pay, for us, it was $5,000 up front. So you pay $5,000 or you're going to pay more than $5,000 as you go through this thing.
It's like gas when you get a rental car.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Like there's a time where paying for the gas up front can be very advantageous. Because you don't want to pay for it on the back.
Screw me. I've never done it. I'm just like, I know your tricks.
Usually get a pretty good price on the gas.
And also they want you to pay in advance for the tolls. And I don't trust that either. I'm like, you don't know where I'm going. You don't know what I'm doing.
Okay. I haven't seen the toll one, but I haven't rented a car in a while. So.
Yeah. I'm a big car renter.
But yeah, so people assume that because we paid for our unconditional bond in the criminal case that we haven't had drug testing and we haven't complied or some other nonsense. And it's like, no, I think the first drug test we turned in was at our hearing on June 7th. And then after that, we were ordered, it was June 6th or June 7th. After that, we were ordered to comply with drug testing. And we have like the entire time. And shocker, they're all clean. It's amazing. But yeah, people assume that we're just sitting around, and that restriction's great. Like that includes alcohol and everything. You can't do anything. It's amazing.
How fun. just your thoughts. You're alone with just your thoughts.
Just your thoughts and your sweet tea.
Have you seen your kids since all this went down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see our kids, right now we see them 5 times a week, and they'll be back in our house really soon. So,
oh wow, okay.
Again, it's another misconception. People think, again, they've created this fiction in their head that the state thinks that we like abused our children or that we did anything other than the state's position is that there's this statute that says this happened. And again, without making any admissions or denials on stream publicly, that's the state's position, is that we're charged with this under this statute. All of the other stuff that people have created about like child endangerment, child neglect, child maltreatment, that's not in the state's case. They don't believe that that's happened. And guys, they talk to the kids. They talk to fucking everybody you know. And what they find in our case is pretty simple. The community knows that we're very involved in our kids' lives. Our kids love the hell out of us. Our kids are all in very good health. No one saw any signs or symptoms of any of the stuff that the internet has created. So, we're on track to get our kids back relatively quickly for this county, which is, in my opinion, way too long. But that being said, they'll be back really soon. Sorry to dispel that one, guys, but we're not charged with the things that people on the internet have decided that we have, and we're not even accused of them. Not just that we're not charged, it's that they don't have any information leading to the conclusion that our kids are mistreated. So we've seen them throughout this entire process, and it's just been building towards the state being confident that there's not some substance in the home. It's like, that means the state can come and look, and they did yesterday. It was great. You get to give the state a nice tour of your house whenever they want.
Gives you a reason to vacuum, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, again, there's a lot of I guess headcanon that's out there that people have, and it's incorrect. And like, I wish I could just correct it all, like, all the time. You want to, when you like read about it or hear someone talk about it, or you get a message and you're like, I wish I just could sit there, but you can't sit and do it. One, that can get really problematic for your case if you're talking all the time. Two, you just don't have time to address it all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. That clears up a couple of things. Let's see. I don't know if I want to. There's a lot. There are some super chats here. We can address them, or I mean, you can only talk about.
I'm here at your pleasure. So if you want to do super chats, like, there are things in my case I absolutely can't talk about. The stuff that I'm talking about is stuff that is pretty well set and is easy to like discuss and doesn't have implications for the case itself. So I can't talk about specific facts of the case. Those things are going to have to go through court. I can't talk about legal strategy. Those things are going to have to be done in court, all of that stuff. But I'm fine just saying I can't answer that to any super chats. So you don't have to censor anything.
From Kate McKnight, Nick, if there are issues with the warrant, why not sign the release for the body cam footage? Nothing but love to Chrissie.
People have a misunderstanding about the body cam footage and a release. I haven't seen a release for the body cam footage. The body cam footage right now, I believe, is considered confidential information as it's part of an investigation. And so under the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, a body cam footage cannot be released even to me, except as part of discovery. So there isn't like a go sign a release. Like, I don't have the ability to authorize the release of the body cam footage, nor does anybody else involved in it at this time. That would be when it moves from confidential information to private information. I believe then, I'm not an expert in this area of law, I've never had to deal with it, but I believe at that point people could sign releases and have it released. If someone was told that they were going to get access to the body cam footage prior to that occurring, they were probably not told the truth. But there's not like, the state has not sent me a thing like, sign this to like release the body cam footage. They've never asked me. It's never been brought up to me in any sort of way. So people have this idea. It's like, oh, Nick, just go sign the release. Like, well, like, what release? Sorry, like, legitimately, I think people may have misread the statute on how this works, but I don't know. I haven't read the statute either, but no one's presented me with the opportunity to do so.
Mark of reality. I hate this guilty until proven innocent mentality that has been shoved into internet culture. It's toxic, and 99% of the time it's total bullshit.
Yeah, I mean,
but it is more entertaining, I guess.
It's look, I go both ways on it. Obviously, I'm biased towards, I want people to give me the benefit of the doubt or whatever, but I also realize that and I've said this a trillion times. It's weird. It doesn't matter how many times you say this. People are always like, see, he's trying to say this. Like, no, the people out there can only make moral judgments, value judgments, character judgments based on the information they have. The hard part about being in the criminal justice system specifically is that if you say something that then interferes with your case, the negatives are the stripping of your liberty, right? Like you could go to prison. And so you have to just let things marinate. And you just have to. Like for me, I've been remiss to talk about much of anything up until recently, as kind of the schedule for our kids coming back has been more set down, because you don't want the state taking something way out of context and trying to use that against you. You want to make sure that you have a clear set of expectations, and then that you're fulfilling those expectations so that you're on the right timeline to do what you need. So I've been hesitant to talk about any of the stuff involving the kids' cases outside of what's public. And a lot of it shouldn't be public under Minnesota law, but hey, once it happens, it happens. So, I've been hesitant to talk about it. And what I always say is, like, the trade-off of that is me focusing on my main priorities, which was first getting kids back, and second, protecting my liberty through the criminal case. Like, having to do that means that I have to sacrifice part of any sort of public image. You have to just let people make judgments about you. And you can't be mad that they don't have all the information, because unless you're going to give it to them, what else are they supposed to do? So like the concept of innocent until proven guilty is a concept that's valuable. And I always believe we should uphold that, but it doesn't preclude people from making moral judgments about someone else. And you can't really bitch about it too much if people just, go based off of the information that they have. So it sucks reading a bunch of shit that isn't true, or reading people say that you're like really terrible, and you're like, really, like, okay, but what do you do about it otherwise? You just have to wait.
It's fun to jump to conclusions.
Like that game in Office Space.
That was a jump to conclusions, Matt.
Yeah. It's like, did anybody actually ever make that thing?
I would love to have one.
One thing that people they don't really get, and it's hard to convey because no one believes you. But again, the state doesn't have any information about this substance in our house. They don't know where it came from. They don't know who owns it. We're charged. We're not convicted. So until they convict us, you go into this like realm of legal fiction where they have a thing that they've got. They've got a thing. They've field tested it. They haven't done the BCA, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension testing. So it's not actually like, they don't actually know what they have until it goes through this testing. The field tests are not admissible at trial. They have to actually get it tested at a lab. It has to be observed and all of that stuff. So that hasn't occurred yet, to my knowledge. If it has, we haven't gotten the results yet. But so there's this legal fiction where they go, okay, we think we have a thing that violates a statute. And so in the family case, they act in the interest of safety, like this abundance of caution, like, okay, this is a thing we think is dangerous, so we got to do this thing with the kids, right? But what they don't actually have yet is proof of any of it. They don't have proof of what the substances are, and they don't have positive drug tests from us. And they don't have like a whole bunch of interviews saying that like we're bad parents or anything like that. So they're operating in this realm where, okay, we see this thing, and they do what everybody does on the internet. It's the same. This is just a human condition. We see these things and we build a story in our head about what it must be. And then they start trying to find out how to fill out the gaps in that story. And the problem that the state has had for us in the child case is they can't fill in the gaps for what they think is occurring. They can't find, like some people have said, oh, that's like an amount that they would use for distribution. It's like, well, okay. Well, they can't find people that were distributed to, for example. A lot of times what they'll have is there will be arrests of small possession charges for people that will lead back to a dealer. We don't have anything like that. They can't find any testimony from people that we were intoxicated. Our kids said that they've never seen drugs. They've never seen us intoxicated. They don't know anything about that.
Okay. Wow.
So like they don't have this story that they think they have, and they don't have the story that the internet thinks they have either. And so the state has this problem where they go, well, something had to have happened. We just can't figure out what it is.
Why did we go there?
Right. And so it produces this weird place that we're in, where they're returning our kids because they can't find any evidence of the types of abuse or neglect or anything that accompanies their normal sort of process. Normally if they go into a house and remove a substance, they find people with addictions, they find kids in turmoil and distress, they found stuff. And when they came into our house, what they found was a shitload of laundry, because we have 5 children and we have way too many clothes because we just have a shitload of clothes.
Was it folded? Was it like ready to be laundered, or were they laundered and just not put away?
It was both. And the thing is, like, our living room is right outside of the laundry room. So it was in piles, sorted out, ready to go in. And then there were some piles that were folded and stuff like that, ready to be put away. But that's just kind of the nature of the house.
You guys both do the laundry? Is there?
Yeah.
I feel like, because it always falls to me.
Oh, well, there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about a week of laundry in a house of 7 people, it's 50 shirts. It's 50 pairs of pants. Like, it's a lot.
You guys aren't re-wearing? I'm wearing stuff till it smells sometimes.
Oh God, see, no. you can't do that, because if people report, that's another thing. Like there's a misunderstanding of some reports where people say that like some of our kids were re-wearing clothes multiple days and stuff like that. And it's like, well, no, we have a shitload of laundry and the kids still had plenty of clean clothes that they're wearing. But again, reports from people who don't live in your house about things, you can't really control what other people say.
Love you guys. Thank you for the chats. Thank you for the comments. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye. Bye. All right. Love you guys. God, I don't even want to leave. This candle smells so good. I don't want to leave. All right. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye. Love you all. Join the Discord. Feet. Love you all. Wow. You guys are awesome. Love you, get it. Bye, guys. Bye. Now I'm really leaving. Love you. Bye.